realities. So what we have to do is start activating the heart chakra. We have to make sure that this heart is active. One way to kind of ignite the inner um, force is to do like vocalizations. Mantra vocalizations, speaking affirmations like to the elements, to connect with the creator, whether that's connecting with the higher father principle, the higher mother principle, um, all of the different heroes, whether Krishna, Ram, Mercury, Hermes, Osiris, Ma'at, all of these different beings are virtues and principles and soul powers, or better yet, soul allies. They're allies to the soul and should be used and activated. So we have, in this age of Aquarius, it's been less and less where people see the universe around them as alive. Like back then, astrology wasn't simply just predicting events. It was all about the knowing the personality behind all of the planets, all of the zodiac, all of the seasons. That every season was another face of deity. Every hour of the day, in certain increments, take on a different face, a different temperament, or a different mood of the one causal force that emanates through all beings. So, in the Upanishads, it says, out of the Supreme Spirit came the fire. The fire produced the air, the water, and then we go even more dense into the earth, where we are given these physical bodies which resemble the skeletal system. Now, regardless if they used to be silicone-based and more subtle in nature, they're still part of the physical realm. These bones are just evidence of Saturn's extra influence, and we have to experience what it's like to be inside of these carbon-based bodies. We've already experienced the, more translucent silicone-based bodies, but we have to be practical and work from where we're at now. So we have to start becoming more subtle in our physical bodies now. We have to start making our physical bodies transmute. And if you're already on the path of course, number one is always ethics. I call them super ethics or esoteric ethics, which means to following the inner good within yourself, to trying to temper and tame the more animalistic nature until it slowly turns into what it's meant to be. So during that process, we have to work with this physical body, with the bones. And in order to etherealize it, we have to have the energy. The reason why I bring up the charity and the ethical nature is because if God is the good principle, Christ is the good principle. The good principle is what takes us out of the snares of the illusion, whether it be egotistical, narcissist. If not many, including during this age, there's many disorder. Right now, when I'm saying disorders of the mind, I'm saying more like aggregates that we create. There's a lot of addiction. There's a lot of self-absorption, lots of deceit, pride, a lot of these elements. But that is not a bad thing, because these elements that we have to work with are going to be the crude material that we use in creating the philosopher's stone. So that's all what has to be burned in the Aries calcination process. That burning purification process turns it into ashes. Those ashes are then extracted, the vapors or the soul essence, from the physical. We're extracting the essence from the physical material, but we're not going at it there, because Jesus says we bring heaven to earth. I'm bringing the kingdom of heaven down to earth. So we're taking, once we separate the subtle from the gross, we have to combine them. We have the fire and the wind on one side, more of the spirit, and we have water and earth on the other. Now, when the recombining process, boom, the alchemical marriage takes place, and that is when the extracted spirit then begins to take effect and subtly purify the physical body. The body must become etherealized. There's some people that are walking on air, or there's terms that we use he looked like he's walking on clouds, he's walking on water, he's walking on he's walking on sunshine. These things that we hear are all symbolic emblems of higher states of consciousness. You can reach a stage of life in this physical body where you're walking on sunshine. And maybe other people won't be able to see it, but your atoms or your physical body is actually becoming more etherealized and more translucent. There are beings, it's nothing to practice now, unless you dedicate your whole life to it, but there are beings that can walk through walls, teleport, and do all different types of things that they dedicated their entire life and have the correct blueprint within themselves, or lineage of knowledge to understand that it is very possible. But just as basic esotericists, like Isra Regardi once said, it's easier to understand how to do practical things. You're in this universe of limitation for a reason. In the higher realms, you could become unlimited. Here is a time to practice and work with the limited nature. So by working with the limited nature, we learn the knowledge of good and evil. We know the knowledge of left and right. And we know also the evil and the good in the evil. We start to learn these different processes. We begin to see pleasure more as a repulsion, and pain as more of a lesson. We begin to learn how to suffer slowly as we slowly observe ourselves developing our consciousness into its highest state of being. So this is called the purification of fire. As we go through the water baptism, we're physically incarnated into a physical body. When the sun's going down into the ocean waters, it seems to be going in and into the waters. In the ancients, they knew that this was a symbol of the soul descending from Kether to Malkuth and being dunked inside of the physical water. And that's what the mystery of the Red Sea is, because the body is 70% liquid water. That water is the Red Sea, or the water ocean that the initiate has to evaporate. In all of the ancient legends, there's always a story of the Logos or the Christic being evaporating waters, whether it be Moses transitioning through the Red Sea, Jonah coming out of the well, Jesus walking on water. We have the Captain Sinbad in the ocean conquering the waters. All of these holy evaporations, or when it says Jehovah came down and evaporated the waters from the earth, it is talking about the fiery spirit within us that must be ignited to create this holy evaporation process that feeds the translucent bodies. Once the bodies are fed and nourished, our faculties come back, plain and simple. The talents, the faculties, the inner reservoir of bliss, the self-contentment comes back. It is a simple method of cause and effect. So one way to practice to etherealize the body is, everyone has learned a lot of rhythmic breathing, basic breathing exercises. There's a lot of videos on the Academy. If you go back through the archives, there's lots of breath videos, not on my channel. I've taught a couple of them, but there's a lot of pranayama. And when you combine it with this process of imagining that the body's pores are opening up to the sizes of sponge holes, and that your pores have holes all over your body in the same way a cheese, or think of like spider webs. And this is from Western esoteric practices called pore breath, which actually goes to farther in Taoist teachings, alchemical teachings of the Taoist, where we begin to nourish our bones with pranic light energy, which slowly sublimates them if combined with conserving all of your energies in the appropriate way so that you have enough material to transmute, because it's kind of like a laboratory operation. So if you maintain focus, relaxation, eyes slightly shut. Of course, we always stare at the bridge of Brahman, Brahman's cave, dark room if you can. Set your body into a state of relaxation. And when you breathe in, pretend that you're breathing 360 degrees around you, coming in to the center of your spine. So instead of breathing in your nose and your mouth, believe that your pores are 360 degree all around your body, inhaling the air, using your spine as a central column where the inhalation is taking place. After about 10 minutes, your body is going to start feeling like it doesn't exist. The holes are going to feel like the air is actually moving into your body, into your bones, and you should feel intense tingling sensations of strange this tingling sensations prana, and this is how you can begin to feed your etheric body. Now, your astral body and your mental body have to be fed differently, but they all come to the same conclusion. Those more subtle bodies are more activated through the consciousness of subtle activities. So overcoming internal trials, overcoming internal tests that the universe puts us to purify our character. The purification of our character is what helps to activate those finer subtle bodies, which then once activated be able to have more vivid experiences and more prophetic downloads when we go to sleep. Because when we're in darkness, just like the initiates, they have the blindfold. Those initiates, that blindfold represents the unable to see in the dark. And when we close our eyes, we see darkness. When we go to sleep, we see darkness. So the ability of the alchemist is to create an illuminating effect. Our meditations become more serene and more bright. It's just that we have to take time to identify with the black orb, the black portal within ourselves that is Krishna, which is beyond space and time. And I always say that it feels like it's hovering kind of behind your back or atop your head. So it's better to practice a lot of meditations we practice throughout our journey. And the root chakra, the heart, the solar plexus, we should try to focus on this chakra above our head, which is going to take us to bridge our pineal gland connection to the spiritual sky so that we can have a better navigation. And the reason why this has to be going over in another time, this is all just basic knowledge, but because we're being bombarded so much by these entropic forces, we have to take like little extra measures just to make sure that we're staying connected. So, they say man without some type of spiritual connection to religion becomes slowly mentally ill over time. So the whole point is to develop a sense of devotion to the Supreme and try to find out how to merge your will in the Creator's will so that your will is purified and taken up to such a high level that the four elements can't perturb you, that you don't get drowned in the waters of emotion, that you don't become a hysterical, that you don't become a fanatic, a condemner, a judger, that you tame your earth so that you're not just a lazy bone sleeping all day. Now, if you need rest, know how to rest. When we're resting and there's a time in the Tao Te Ching, it says there's a time for everything. There's a season for these things. There's a season for celebration, a season for work, a season for rest, a season to get angry, a season to be sad, a season to grieve. We can't fight those seasons. We're not trying to take ourselves out of them. The problem is that we become obsessive and compulsionary. Humans, we become compulsive about these things. We dawdle and dwaddle in melancholy. We get absorbed into depressions of Saturn, and then we want alcohol. We become indulged in greed of materialism of Jupiter, and then we always are thinking about what are we going to wear today? What are we going to, how can I acquire more funds? If we're becoming, and it's not bad to have these. It's just know how to switch them on and off like little switches on a switchboard. You should be able to control the Jupiter, control the Mars. If somebody doesn't have Mars, you're not going to get angry when needed. Your family's getting robbed and you do nothing about it. Your Mars is shut off. You should be angry and violent towards an attacker. Of course, to show them as much remorse as possible, but if your Mars is inactive, which is a problem with a lot of men in this day and age, is that the passive principles overtaking too much, so their Mars is becoming infiltrated, demasculized, and women are becoming overly masculized. So men are becoming feminized and effeminate, and women are becoming masculine because of this. It has all been pre-planned. It has all been pre-planned because they already know the esoteric science of the soul, so they know how to thwart that and to warp it into something it's not. So basically what we do is we just ignite the inner fire within, that fiery impulse of the Christic force, the NIRI, which is the nature purifies by fire. That inner fire within us is the inner spiritual sun, the central sun. That sun is what transmutes all of the waters in our body. Those chemical waters, once transmuted, are then luminescently light, just like distilled water from the rain contains more spiritual properties than just mineral water. That distilled water that we get from rainwater is on a higher potent level, a more subtle level, a more etherealized. We have to etherealize our fluids. Remember the four rivers of Eden: the spit, the blood, the urine, and the well, I mean, could it be sweat, or could it be, I'd say, the sexual energy? The four rivers, the four fluids, the four seasons, all of these have to be, the Garden of Eden, to be properly nourished again. These rivers have to be flowing. The Jordan River, which is the spinal column, has to be continually getting a prophet doused in it. Moses has to be continually put within to ride up, to become enslaved in Egypt, to overtake it, to become better. Joseph and the coat of many colors. Joseph, he was hated by his brothers. His dad, Jacob, gave him a coat of many colors. Please see my YouTube video, Joseph, the Mysteries of the Coat of Many Colors. This initiate is, of course, Joseph is the sun. The coat of many colors are the 7 lights that come from the sun. That coat is what the initiate wears when he's starting to activate his internal inner rainbow, the inner rainbow of the 7 lights. The 7 lights, each one correlating to a gland and a body and a nervous center, all connected to the nervous system, which is the tree of knowledge. This is why the Bible is a biochemical book of anatomy. And we're learning about Joseph, the coat of many colors. His dad, of course, favors him because he is a little bit more innocent. He's a little bit more peculiar. He's a little bit more curious. His brothers don't like him too much. In fact, they try to kill him. They put him in a pit. Of course, this is the sun descending. So he's thrown in the pit. Then they decide not to kill him. They sell him as slavery to Egypt. While he's a slave there, because he's so crafty, he's the higher spiritual nature. He does math better than everyone. He's a better leader than everyone. The person that enslaves him ends up turning him to Lord of the land. He becomes Lord of the land, and then his brothers even end up coming back begging for food during a drought. And the father is, he basically tells him, hey, I'm your brother, but it's all because of God. It ended up being God in the end, that God used the brothers, the wicked brothers at the end, to elevate Joseph. So our negative features within ourselves at the end of the day are going to be used to elevate the inner Joseph so that we activate our coat of many colors and get out of the pit. Sometimes we're sold to Egypt for slavery, but then even then the solar light conquers over the darkness, over the temptations, and ends up using it for its benefit anyway. Hence, we use our negative consequences for our negative circumstances for lessons. We always learn our lesson. And the inner Joseph is the one that comes to you when no one else does. Joseph is always checking on his brothers. He's coming to check to make sure they're okay and working. But because that is almost a sense of annoyance to them, they tell them to flee. So essentially, these allegorical stories open up portals to the psychological realm. Each archetype is personified and purified and given these intelligent features and functions because they represent certain subtle activities that take place within our life. Like when we have a breakthrough willpower moment, that's Moses. That spirit that comes to check on you, that's Joseph. Abraham is the inner father within that produces all of the other subtle spiritual faculties. So, let's read a little bit from Albert Boyd Kuhn. Let's see. Water, however, is not confined solely to earth, but in the forms of vapor, visible as cloud or rain, and invisible as rarefied water vapor, pervades the earth's upper regions. But here we have in Hebrew concept of the heavens, the idea of heavens as the place where the waters of the upper firmament are associated with fire, sun or lightning. Hence, to the word for water, mayim, they prefixed that the letter of their alphabet, which is the symbol for fire, the letter shin, and this gives the word for heaven, the shiai mayim. This would convey all that range of meaning which flows from the idea of the original fiery power of the divine mind or spirit of God interfusing itself. One moment, please. I have someone at the door.
The inner sound current and the lost word. In the scriptures, we are told about the voice from heaven that came from above, or in the Upanishads, the subtle sounds we hear within, such as the sound of a wasp nest or a deep hum. The Bible indicates sounds from heaven. Quote, there was a roar from heaven that sounded like an ocean and thunder. These refer to the inner planes, the astral plane being the water and the rushing sounds of the ocean, and the causal plane, the sound of thunder. All of these sounds can be heard within the deep recesses of the mind and the consciousness. On a day-to-day basis, we are distracted by all the mechanical sounds and frequencies emitted by our everyday words, and not many become familiar with high-pitched sound tones happening within their head. This sound current is the lost word of Freemasonry, and in the past, when initiated into a pure mystical order or true yogic path, the true mystic, either from east or west, would introduce you to this inner sound current within your head. It has always been there from the beginning. Perhaps you have noticed it on one or more occasions throughout your life. Now you know that it is the voice of God, the Word. Jesus says, follow my word, and the word is the cosmic sound that sustains and gives birth to all beings and organisms in the physical and non-physical realms. This sound current within your head, if focused on with concentration and in the deep recesses of silence, can be used to unlock the doors to hidden planes of existence beyond the physical. It is also the basis of the still small voice, the inner consciousness, or the inner Jiminy Cricket within yourself, the voice of consciousness that is always pointing to the correct way. Those who have heard the sound within and know that it is the Logos, or the voice of God, or the Om of the Brahmins, they then can begin participating in self-conscious immortality. So, how can we access this inner sound within? It takes a silent mind and just placing your attention on the inner sound within your head. So, if you cancel out all sounds, just chill in your room or in a place of silence, then simply close your eyes, focus on your breath, and hear that loud pitch in your ears that is often misdiagnosed as tinnitus, is actually the sound current, your personal sound current or ketone that you can use to transverse into higher realms and higher planes of existence. You have to essentially fall asleep with your attention remain focused on that sound, and you'll notice that you can amplify the sound and make it louder. And the louder you make it, it will consume your whole body and put your consciousness and astral body in a state where it can detach from the physical body and you can explore the inner world. So it takes a lot of practice. It's also used as a foundational root. It's your root of consciousness or your heart center that once you anchor in on this, your entire life becomes simple. You're able to walk upon the waters of life instead of utilizing earth or water, air, fire, or any of the intrinsic physical tangible elements. You're tapping into the ether or the unseen, the invisible, which is where the controller is. And once you tap into the controller, then you can see the automated processes of nature and begin to actually align or even interrupt and change and transmute certain features and facets of the physical life. So the inner sound current is the lost word. It's the sound that was heard from heaven. In the Bible, it always talks about the sound opening up the trumpets, the loud roar from heaven, or a voice from the burning bush. In the Upanishads, it's the Om, or the cosmic sound vibration. Yeah, you could do Om physically, but that sound is already in existence within the recesses of your mind. So we can tap into this daily by simply becoming aware of that sound. Now, is it enough to be aware? Because once you're initiated, your consciousness will reveal to you that this sound is actually the voice or the logos, and the logos is the accumulative center point of truth, love, and wisdom, and the first emanation of the divine. So the divine emanates a personified or personal form that inhabits all the attributes of the highest dimensions, which are glory, wisdom, love, light, light, live, livity, and love. are the three main foundations of this. And this emanation is the logos of the word and helps construct and organize all material realm. That's why we're not just, and it's what makes humans more than just automatons of nature. Essentially, it's the enlivening spirit. It's what transmuted Pinocchio from a puppet into a real boy, and Jiminy Cricket being the consciousness and being an allegory for the inner sound current within you. So find access to this and take heed to it. Hello, everyone. I wanted to make sure that you knew my website is innermysteries.org, where you can contact me for questions. You can book consultations, where I offer $100 donation for 1 hour Skype or Zoom in-depth one-on-one advice for life, relationships, direction, cultivation of passion, or hobbies and magical training. Also offering the ability to help you as a personal advisor, help with projects, planning, issues, one-on-one training, and personalized training plans, unlimited calls and messaging for $300. Also offering cell salt consultations. I will determine the biochemical cell salt combination that is needed to help you manage your symptoms and experience relief based on symptoms and time of birth. So email campbellchris0402@gmail.com. Put cell salt consultation in the subject line, or just put consultation in the subject line, and I will be able to set that time and date for you. Also, check out my book, The Divine Mysteries of Existence, can be found here under the book tab, as well as a free recommended reading list of all the great esoteric books that help bring forth the truth to humanity. Also offering at the wellness store biochemical cell salt remedies. Just click this link and it will take you to my product store, where you can actually get more than just cell salts. There are all different kinds of remedies here, from bronchial support, respiratory, as well as cell salts, all natural, and some of the best homeopathic remedies to date. Also offering online training and courses. Just email me, campbellchris0402@gmail.com. All of this can be found at innermysteries.org. The courses include Hermetic Alchemy, 12 Steps to Alchemical Process. Inquire prices. It's a small $100, but donations are accepted and can be worked out for a cheaper price. And if you want to support my work, just subscribe for a 5-month donation. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone's doing well.
The Bible talks about the Christ within. The Christ within being the Word that was on manifest before creation of physical and spiritual organisms. It is the organizing factor of the entire universe and is of the essence of love and wisdom. If love and wisdom were the father-mother principles combined together, they form the three, which is the Word or the Christ. The Bible talks about the Christ within. When the Christ is speaking through Jesus in the book, it is the essence of truth, love, and wisdom encapsulated into a human language and distilled to us through the Word made flesh, or the Christ within us, who does the redeeming process. As Christ says, it is the Christ within you that actually activates this internal process. Now, that means that for 2,000 years, let's say Jesus was, let's just say he was historical, and it was 100% true that Christ came down as a physical human being on earth and spoke through an individual. Some of the theosophical schools state this, depending on what church or esoteric religion you're in or follow. It determines whether or not, you believe whether it's an allegory or not. So let's just say it was historical. So for 2,000 years then, everyone who has a personal relationship with Jesus or the Christ has this transcendental relationship with a being of love and wisdom, intelligence, compassion, but they've never seen the being in person. He's never come directly to their front door and knocked in a physical human form. Some religions even claim that they speak to Jesus in human form. Now, most people can say that they haven't seen Jesus the Christ in human form, but they have felt his presence and have acted upon his will and have renewed their mind in his spirit. This is because the Christ is a spirit, and the Spirit of God dwelleth within man and woman. And when we speak from that higher principle, we are communing with the Spirit, and the Word is being made flesh through our physical bodies when we speak. Now, it says the Lord doesn't dwell in temples made by hammer or sword. So in the Bible, when the Lord is speaking to the prophets in these temples, we're automatically led to the understanding that these are not literal temples. And the only temple that was made in the universe without hammer or sword is none other than the universe itself being a temple, and our physical human bodies. The entire universe is the solar temple of Solomon, soul and moon, sun and moon, but not the physical objects or transparent portals that we see in the heavens, but what they represent beyond them, what put them there, the intelligence that manifests them. We have the physical bodies as temples that once the individual comes to a correct understanding of knowledge, as Jesus says, with lack of knowledge, my people perish. With that knowledge of self, we manifest that spirit within our temple. And then the Christ within us saves us. Everyone has an individual, personal relationship with the Lord, because the Lord is not a historical person in the mundane terms of it. Because that's like saying I have a personal relationship with John Lennon, or I have a personal relationship with Bob Marley. I've never met Bob Marley. I listen to his music. I may say that I listen to Mozart, or I study under a particular philosopher, and I maybe gain insights from them in a transcendental way, but to say that I know them personally in a physical form would be abstruse. So everyone who has a personal relationship with the Lord obviously already understands the transcendental nature of Christ, that Christ is a transcendental being that presides over the unmanifest and manifest worlds. So with that understanding, we can come to the conclusion that the transcendental Christ that we actually worship through love, peace, and understanding, we're able to come into direct contact with the living Word. The Word dwells and hovers above the waters of the nervous system, the waters of the body. The rivers of Eden are in the physical body, but also flow through the pleroma and the supernal realms and manifest the astral, causal, and mental planes and physical planes. The different rivers, also the blood, the saliva, the sexual fluids, the salt of the earth. It's all referring alchemically to the physical organisms manifested by the Word, because every physical organism in the universe is manifested by the Word. Sound comes first. Sound manifests form. This is already proven scientifically. When the natural man is subdued, and we come to our higher senses, we experience the Christ within us. And that Christ within us allows us to be more than just beasts or automatons of nature. We actually are self-cognizant, self-reflecting. We have a sense of communal brotherhood and sisterhood with all of humanity, that part of us within that doesn't have race, religion, or sect, and does not discriminate against people, persons, or any type of discrimination or judgment. Like the Tao Te Ching says, the bad man is the good man's job. We're all here to take care of each other. We're all here to elevate each other. We're here to distinguish evil and transmute it and allow everyone to redeem themselves through Christ within. And that's how you resurrect from this plane as an immortal soul and continue living in the great beyond. A lot of people say Rome created Christianity as just a mix of pagan beliefs and religions and turned them all into one. That's where the whole doctrine of the, worshiping an actual physical historical person that's going to take away all, your sins for you just by mere belief, which that belief in and of itself was promoted by Martin Luther when the Roman Catholic Church decided to transition into that belief system as well. Before, you could just pay or do certain indulgences to be forgiven in the afterlife. And then they changed to the other extreme. It was mere belief. Jesus Christ said, faith without works is dead. This should simply end the argument between esoteric Freemasonic ideas of ancient Christianity and Catholicism. As an initiate, Max Hindle claimed both schools are actually have a purpose in this universe and produce different souls. Souls of fire and souls of water. All religions are stepping stools and understanding tools to help reclaim the bondage of the soul in the animalistic tendencies of the physical nature of humanity. Without the physical nature of humanity and going against these tempting forces, man would not be able to form an actual form or a soul form after death. That's why in the astral plane people look like people. Once you're in the physical plane, no matter how long it is, you qualify for the astral realm. You exist in form. Before you were formless, now you're in form. You had to come here to be gestated in the womb, the tomb, the womb of Mary. Joseph, being the foster father of the Son, or the solar logos, or the Word, meaning the primordial force of the Father, outpoured forth and was organized by the demiurge, Joseph. Alvin Boyd Kuhn states they've taken these transcendental gods, or transcendental beings, being Joseph, the carpenter of the universe, Mary, the mother of all living, and the Christ, the inner consciousness within man, that is of the voice or the logos of truth, love, and wisdom, or the first cause, the part of us that is from and united from the first cause of the dawn of the creation of eons of the universe. And they've taken these transcendental, allegorical, supernal beings and have placed them in the physical realm, in sense that God has fallen to earth. God has fallen to earth and become a literal historical fact rather than a transcendental truth. Everyone has been cultivating the Christ within, because without it you wouldn't be able to leave this plane. There are many earthbound souls that are earthbound after death through false religious beliefs and misinterpreted beliefs of reincarnation and misinterpreted religious beliefs of the literal. And instead of cultivating the Christ within, that in the Bible says that is what saves you, they've asked the physical Jesus to help them, when in the Bible the Jesus, the Lord or the Christ, or if you want to say it's a historical person, said in that time, ask me for nothing. And we've disregarded our the quote, faith without works is dead, and we've gone on just a path of belief, just a path of faith with no real transmuted understanding. We have not transmuted the water into wine and come to the spiritual, eternal conclusion of the real universal church that is trying to be co-opted by various men and organizations in different facets of life, and trying to claim something that's transcendental, something that is very psychic, something that is very eternal, something that is very supernal, and are trying to monopolize it. Now in the East, it's already evident. Then they say the Paratman, or God within the heart. And they understand that God is one, sees all, hears all, but is also within each one's heart. And obviously Christians have to understand this fact, because if they have a personal relationship with Jesus and they've never met him in the historical plane, then obviously they have a cultivation of a personal relationship with the Christ Spirit, which then, in my opinion, proves that the Christ is transcendental. But to seers of ancient wisdom, we are not looking for proof or evidence. I don't need any type of proof or evidence to understand the soul and the essence of God and Christ. And I'm not looking for historical personages, any type of historical personage to confirm my beliefs in God and the afterlife and the immortality of the soul, the resurrection of the splendid body. But it just takes you back to that quote that ends all argument. Faith without works is dead. You need both.
Today we're going to be looking into the Upanishads, the ancient wisdom of the East and of Brahm. And in this context, we're going to understand that when it's talking about Om or Brahman, it's talking about the Supreme Spirit or the Lord of the universe, that all human beings are essentially led by naturally, and religions all seem to grasp at this the best they can, all claiming that they are the one and only. You can find this type of thought in East and the West. Everyone wants to monopolize religion, but if we transcend that duality and understand that God has revealed his truth to different humans and civilizations in varying degrees, depending on what kind of soul that they're going to be developing in the hereafter, because the physical world is simply just the womb or gestation place of all souls. So this is our first time of being an actual individual self, and once we give up the ghost, then we transcend and acquire the body of fire, because this is the earth and water body that we have been baptized into, earth and then water, and then through the Holy Spirit, or the ether or air, or Aleph in Hebrew, the element of wind, spiritual air, the Holy Spirit. Through that we ascend to the glorious body of fire, which is immortal and free from all ills. So we're going to dive into this Upanishad, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, and it says, Om, all those that are invisible are filled by Brahman. All those that are visible are also fully permeated by Brahman. The whole universe has come out of the whole Brahman. Brahman is still full, although the whole universe has come out of it. O God, with our ears may we hear what is auspicious, with our eyes may we see what is auspicious. O ye worshipful ones, may we enjoy the life allotted to us by the gods, offering to them the activities of our strong limbs and body as a lifelong praise. So out of the invisible, the Brahman, which in the invisible in the spirit world, actually, it's not that it's invisible. When I say invisible, It's not talking about the invisible in the sense that it doesn't exist in form. It's just that in the physical world, we can't see these invisible glories, essentially. May Brahman protect us both together. May he nourish us both together. May we both work together with great energy. May our study be vigorous and effective. May we not hate each other. So this is chapter 1, and it says, students of Brahman, God, discuss what is the cause. Is it Brahman? Whence are we born? Why do we live? Where is our final rest? Under whose orders are we, who know the Brahman, subjected to the law of happiness and misery? Time, nature, law, chance, matter, energy, intelligence. Neither these, nor a combination of these, can bear examination because of their own birth, identity, and the existence of the self. The self also is not a free agent, being under the sway of happiness and misery. Because when we come down into from the celestial realm, which is the highest abode of cause, come down into these 7 layers of astral. And these astrals are polarized all the way down in the physical realm, and we're swayed by happiness and misery. And that actually helps us in our experience to form an individual soul. Practicing the method of meditation, they realize that being who is the God of religion. I think that's a beautiful passage. It shows the unity of all true religions before they got corrupted and co-opted by materialism, as well as perhaps even evil entities. But religions from the ancient times, from the ancient religion, Christianity, way beyond any type of configuration of written book, because the word Om or the word Brahm was first, then the cause, and then manifests itself essentially within the entire universe, creating all organisms. So here it says that this is how we discovered that by, and this is the verse here, practicing the method of meditation, they realize that being who is the God of religion, the self of philosophy, and the energy of science, and who exists as the self-luminous power in everyone, who is in the source of the intellect, emotions, and will, who is one without a second, who presides over all causes enumerated above, beginning with time and ending with the individual soul, and who had been incomprehensible because of the limitation of their own intellect. Because we have to rise above intellect, we have to rise above the mind, be able to reach the causal plane where we can see spiritual divine truths and be able to see that. But to us, it seems to embody. So let's see here. We think of him as a universe resembling a wheel, which has one felly, with triple tier 16 extremities, 50 spokes, 20 counter spokes, and 6 sets of 8, which is driven along 3 different roads by means of a belt. And it goes on with these equations similar to in the Noah's Ark story, where it talks about the cubic size of the ark. It's talking about all the divine cyclical nature of reality. We think of him in his manifestation as a universe who is like a river that contains the waters of 5 streams. Again, this is very similar to the Old Testament Garden of Eden, the rivers flowing from Eden. You have the different layers of reality, the causal, the astral, archetypal, the mental, physical planes of existence. And then you also have in your body various different fluids in your body that are alchemically differentiated into rivers. If you think of it like that, the lymphatic system, the blood system, urinary tract system. In this infinite will of Brahman, in which everything lives and rests, the pilgrim soul is whirled about, knowing the individual soul, here though regarded as separate, to be itself the moving force, and blessed by him, it attains immortality. So these are the mysteries of immortality, just like they teach in the Christian Western teachings of Jesus resurrected, caused us to be immortal. Immortality has always been a thing in this universe, that physical souls that come down into this womb of creation to individualize, and then they die here and become immortal. And there's steps and levels of development that occur when the soul is trying to mature. The Lord supports this universe, which consists of a combination of the perishable and imperishable, the manifest and the unmanifest. As long as the self does not know the Lord, it gets attached to worldly pleasures and is bound. But when it knows him, all fetters fall away from it. The conscious subject and the unconscious object, the master and the dependent, are both unborn. She too who is engaged in bringing about the relation of the enjoyer and the enjoyed is unborn. When all these three are realized as Brahman, the self becomes infinite, universal, and free from the sense of agentship. However, that's in the higher spirit world. You'll still have your individuality, as I'll show you in this book called Illuminated Brahmanism, which clearly states that the ancient Brahmins believed that instead of going through endless cycles of reincarnation, the soul simply was gestated in the physical realm, did its development here, and once died, will be able to transcend into the astral spirit world. Not a lot of people go straight to the spirit world. A lot of people go into the world of dreams and ancestors. Some even become earthbound for a while. But the idea is to get to that high immortal plane where you're not swayed by happiness and misery. You're overcoming the good and evil, or knowledge of good and evil, that the serpent tempted Adam and Eve. So there's lots of evidence that shows that in the Old Testament, the West, and the Eastern Upanishads are one, and the Lord that speak about here is the Christ, or the Elohim, so to speak, of the inner word of the cosmic reverb, or word of creation that sustains all life. So with the knowledge of God, all fetters fall off. With the waning of ignorance, birth and death cease, because then you transcend the physical world. You can only die in the physical world. And in fact, death in the spirit world is actually coming down into the physical world. This physical world is actually a state of death, or encapsulation of the soul. But it is here very necessary in order to form ourselves, to be able to form into who we are going to be immortally. We're not just going to be some cosmic fog. We're actually going to have this form and take this actual form with us to the astral plane, just like our dreams have been preparing us for. That's why in the Upanishads it says Brahmin souls, the souls that Brahmin creates, go from waking state in the earth plane, deep sleep, land of dreams, and then there's a gate there beyond the land of dreams into the world of spirit. So there's these different planes of reality. This to be known as eternally existing in one's own self. Indeed, there's nothing to be known beyond this. As a result of meditation, the enjoyer, the enjoyed, and the power which brings about the enjoyment, all are declared to be three aspects of Brahman. So Brahman is the universe, the souls, and the actual one who created both and watches over it from his high abode. Fire is not perceived in its cause, the fire stick, till it is ignited by percussion. Sorry, fire is not perceived in its cause, the fire stick, till it's ignited by percussion. The subtle essence of fire, nevertheless, is not absent in the stick, for fire can be obtained from the source. The fire stick, by striking again, the state of Atman before and after realization is like that of fire. By meditating on pranava, the Atman, the inner soul, which is in the center of your being, which you communicate to through sound, is perceived manifestly in the body. So, by the way, this is translated by Swami Tyagasananda. I'm not reading much of the commentaries, but I'm just kind of winging it here, and we're going into the Upanishads of reading certain passages, and I'm also commentating. Making one's own body the lower piece of wood, and the pranava the upper piece of wood, and practicing churning in the form of meditation, one should realize God as one would find something hidden. When you're meditating, you're actually digging within your soul and coming into your consciousness in the sense that you're churning that out, so that you're churning all the physical senses, closing yourself off to the physical realm, and igniting the inner place within yourself that is the part of yourself that's unmanifest in the physical sense. I'm not saying that in the spirit world or astral plane that things don't take form, but essentially it's of a different type of matter, more of a spiritual substance. So, chapter 2. First, harnessing the mind and the senses with the view to realize the truth, and then having found out the light of fire, the evolving soul brought itself out of the earth. With our minds controlled so as to manifest the self-luminous, immanent soul, we shall vigorously endeavor for the attainment of supreme bliss. Controlling the heaven-aspiring senses with the help of the mind and the intellect, the immanent soul so regenerates them as to enable them to manifest the self-luminous infinite light. And in the Bible it says God is light, love, and he's a sun and a shield. It's light, love, and it's encapsulated in a divine being that is in the same type of form, a transcendental form, as we are, as above, so below. So great is the glory of the immanent soul, who is all-pervading, all-knowing, infinite, and self-luminous. Only those rare few who undergo the necessary discipline and spiritual practices understand this. The wise do indeed control the activities of the intellect and practice meditation and concentration, because in the Bible it says, "Be still and know that I am God," and it says that I am God is the self, the eternal self that Brahman bestows on each of us, that have our own individual glory, our own individual bodies, our own individual mind, soul, and experiences that we have to carve out through these aversions and attractions. Following only in the footsteps of the wise, I merge ye both in the ancient Brahman by continued meditation. May the glorious one manifest himself. May the sons of immortal bliss hearken to me, even though thy who occupy celestial regions. So you have the celestial regions, the astral regions, and we have the lower astral regions, and then we have the physical earth. And then we probably have infernal regions as well. But the whole nature of the universe is to help elevate us out, up and out of the physical caskets and resurrect into eternal life, essentially, through Christ, which is the eternal primordial word, which is made flesh, with the Christ within us.
The symbolism of Jesus going into Jerusalem on the white horse is a symbolic representation of the Christ spirit that conquers within our flesh. It says, Christ in you that dwell in you is your hope and glory. And the Christ within you is in a body. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the mind is drawn by chariots, and that chariot is the senses of the human body, and then the mind is under control of the soul. So Christ being a representation of our higher soul nature, the consciousness that the Christ being bestows upon each individual, is symbolic of us riding on that horse, because our body is the horse, and the Christ within is the Spirit of God that's within each person's heart, that once becoming cognizant of this within ourselves will allow us to ride into Jerusalem on the horse. Now, in other stories, this horse appears Pegasus, the white horse. You have the hippocampus in your brain, hip coming from horse. They have the hips, and then also Sagittarius, the horseman ruling the hips, walking as Jesus is separate from the donkey or the horse, well, the white donkey, but still it's the man horse, and it's man conquering his lower nature of the instinctual modes of being incarnated in a physical intellectual animal, and becoming the master and ruler over the body, so that the body becomes a faithful servant, just like in Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson by George Jurjeff. He explains from that point of view that there's the intellectual center, the emotional center, and then the instinctual center, and that center must be under control of the consciousness. So you must ride onto the white horse, on the noble steed, and that horse also um, representing the stable. When Christ was born in between the animals of the stable, that's a representation of the Christ spirit being born within uh, its opposite mode. It's being born in a physical carnal nature of human form, and that's why he's born in between the goat, Capricorn, and Sagittarius in the stable, and also in our hearts when the Christ comes, and our heart rules over, or our higher spirit rules over our lower passion. So we have the heart is duality as well. It has a negative animal nature, passion, lust, fear, and then the higher nature is compassion, forgiveness, all the things that Christ taught in the Bible or Krishna. Um, and when we acquire the faculty where we are cognizant of the Lord that dwelleth within, the Christ within, the Lord that dwell in a temple not built by hammer or sword, then we are able to ride our donkey, be in full control over the physical nature of the body, not by extinguishing it or making it suppressing it or using it in abnormal manner, but in a balanced way between spirit and matter, and allowing it to be a faithful servant, like what is represented in the Tale of Beelzebub by Gurdjieff, the fictional story that represents esoteric truths. It is represented in there that the carnal mind has to be a servant, and that's what the his son represents the emotions. Beelzebub represents the intellect, and then the faithful servant uh, is the physical body. So in the Bhagavad Gita as well, we have to be the master of our chariot, the five senses, and treat our physical nature like it's four horses, 4 or 5 horses, basically. You have the five senses, the passions, the attractions for the physical nature to be absorbed in the individualized ego center and disconnect from the whole, the super soul mind. And in that sense, the horses become wild and overstrong. It could lead you off the path or into a river or some type of dangerous feat. So to guide your mind and your body correctly with the soul, and then Krishna or God or Allah or Jesus being the supreme intelligence that rules over all things and is the light of our life. Because without that, we would typically not even be able to see, whether physical or internal. So once we conquer our senses, and that's what Jesus represents when he's on the white horse, or why the hero is always on a horse, just like Link from the Legend of Zelda, Epona being the horse goddess, also representing the physical nature, and Link being the spiritual nature, and he conquers the Epona, and it is his noble steed to conquer the evil Ganondorf. So as you can see, this module is used pretty prolifically. We have the horse in our brain, the hippocampus, shaped like a seahorse. Horse Pegasus is a hero horse, the hero's horse. So it's just important to understand that these symbols can be kind of picked apart quite a bit, and you can feel it. Who feels it knows it, and it's better than just intellectualizing it and understanding that this applies to yourself. You know, this is not just a historical event or just a simple myth or metaphor. This is spiritual language being conveyed through the words of men, which is actually the language of angels, because most of these ancient texts come from the ancient languages, as well as English even being a angelic language. So how to conquer your senses by riding and ride that horse, becoming conscious of your everyday actions. So you be conscious of your addictions, conscious of your actions, conscious of your behavior, and making this awareness expand more and more and more until finally you understand and uncover God's laws and the laws of yourself and the universe and whatnot, and then you begin to take compassion to others, compassion to yourself, to not let your appetites rule over reason. It's not that, oh, you're never going to eat again, or you're never going to have sex again, or you're never going to taste the physical world, but it just means that now you are in control of the horse. The horse is there to help you, serve you in your journey to conquer darkness within or without. So essentially, just important to understand this is how we're just going to pick apart metaphors from the Bible, from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Quran, from the Upanishads, various texts, even the Book of Mormon. We might go into various texts and just find particular metaphors, leave any recommendation of a chapter or an allegorical tale in the comments, and I might also do a video on it as well. But essentially, these symbols are cryptographs, as said by Albert Boyd Kuhn. The cryptographs are images conveyed in physical language and story format. You get a picture, an image, and an essence of the scene, of the drama, of the setting of the beautiful storybook, will enliven the meaning, and the meanings conveyed through feeling, not through intellect. It's through intuition and feeling and more of an inner knowing, and it helps guide you through to your phases of spiritual development. As the physical realm, you're just children of the universe. When you're in the angelic realm, you're teenagers of the universe. When you're in the higher demigod realms, you're more mature. And the goal is to get back to unity, the highest conscious dimension with the Lord, and be one with the Lord with separateness and individuality still intact. So in order to do that, we need to conquer this physical body. We only have one opportunity to do that. And with this opportunity, we're going to utilize the spiritual forces, the consciousness that Christ bestows upon all of us to understand right from wrong, to understand where we're going, to understand, always have our compass pointed north, pointed where we need to go, back to cause, and also bringing cause down to the physical realm so that the physical realm can one day rise and meet up back with the spiritual nature. So the spiritual and physical will merge, and what was of earth and what was heaven will merge, essentially. And that's what we need to do within ourselves. So our self is an ecosystem. There's the physical, natural ecosystem, there's a spiritual ecosystem, and we just have to tap into our each individual ecosystem within ourselves, within the world, within the microcosm and the macrocosm. Once we understand the cycles of nature and how it works, how the soul is crystallized into matter to take form, how it utilizes the forces and conquers it, allows it to ride upon the horse. The physical body is the noble steed. And yes, when you die, you will still have a physical body, but it won't be physical in this sense. It'll be protoplasmic and it will be astral. And you will have a noble steed there as well, with senses as well. But that horse will gain wings and become Pegasus.
So today we're going to be looking at the correct interpretation of the model of the Hare Krishna science that was perpetuated in the West and helped people elevate to bhakti, which is love for God and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And today we're going to show how Christ and Krishna are one, and how the ancient texts relayed this information through something called cryptograms that allow us to see into the spiritual dimensions and use words to describe what is seen in the higher realms of existence. And it's all based off this passage. And Santos Bonacci has also taught this in many of his presentations, and shown that the history of Krishna and the history of Christ are transcendental and take place on higher planes of existence, on the inner plane. And when they're explained by the seers or the prophets or the mystics, it is interpreted as historical facts when these are actually transcendental truths. So we're going to go based off of here in chapter 4 of Jaiva Dharma, and that book is by Sri Bhakti Vinoda Thakura. And you can read this book online or even just buy it. It's definitely worth it. And here is the chapter we're going to be looking at to gain evidence and knowledge that the scriptures are anagogical and much more than just historical facts, that you have a personal relationship with Krishna or Christ, even without meeting that person in the physical dimension in person. So let's find out why that is. So, so in this book, it's two people having a conversation. It's a question and answer, and it says, how can Sri Krishna's form be eternal, since he takes birth, performs activities, and gives up his body? Babaji replies, Sri Krishna's form is Sat Chitananda, ever existing, full of knowledge, and completely blissful. His birth, activities, and leaving the body have no connection with mundane matter. Lahiri asked, then why have such descriptions been given in Mahabharata and other Shastras? Babaji replies, the eternal truth defies description, for it is beyond words. The pure soul in its spiritual aspect sees the transcendental form and pastimes of Sri Krishna, but when he describes that supreme reality in words, it appears just like the worldly mundane history. Those who are eligible to extract the essence from the text, such as the Mahabharata, experience Krishna's pastimes as they are. However, when people of mundane intelligence hear these descriptions, they interpret them in different ways. When one meditates on the form of Krishna, the conception that arises in the heart is limited by time and space. How can one transcend such limitations and meditate on the actual form? And that is through understanding that this actually takes place on the screen of your consciousness. In another, there was actually another translation of that book that I had, and it was really interesting because it actually said that this play of Krishna or Christ, or the historical supposed events that some people think are literal, actually take place on the screen of your consciousness. And because of that, you can experience them in a higher level because they're actually happening on the higher planes or the higher dimensions of life, and the drama is taking place within our hearts. He said that when the seers saw these visions in the higher planes of existence, that Krishna being the logos, or the word, because the word is a sound, everything comes from sound, and that sound manifests everything in creation and permeates everything and is transcendental, non-historical, eternal. It's not bound by time and space. But when we explain the nectar of that information and put it into an allegorical form to explain how it works, it comes out as historical. And that's what Alvin Boy Kuhn, another great author, stated, that was, in a sense, another metaphor for God coming down into flesh, the transcendental becoming physical, because you're taking what is invisible and non-tangible, and you're bringing it down and saying that this is a historical place and time that this took place. Now, how it really works is this happens in 7 different layers. It happens in the seasons and the sun going through its trials. We have various different stories of Krishna, like Krishna lifting up a mountain. Krishna was standing on the heads of 7 snakes. He was stealing butter from the butter pots. And his mom saw him in the backyard, and when he was a little boy, because Krishna takes on the father, the son, and the mother. Even he produces the mother of the universe, because he's the stillness, the small witness within, the still small voice within that leads us all. But in the story, it shows the potency of that intelligence. So they tell his mom or foster mother that he ate some dirt. So they go and check and open his mouth to get the dirt out of his mouth, and she sees the entire universe within her own son, because she adopted Krishna as a child, just like Jesus, baby Jesus, God on earth is a child, maybe a baby, then he goes into maturity. Krishna also has pastimes and supposed historical events when he's a child. Now, some people think that this historical event actually took place and there's a historical Krishna, and a physical person actually opened his mouth and saw the universe within it. However, this story is a hyperbole, an exaggeration, and it allows you to open up your mind to the spirit world that surpasses logic and understand that the child of the universe, the Holy One, within its mouth is all creation, and within stems the superfluous flow of the intelligent life of love and wisdom combined. And that's the story of Krishna and Radha, and Krishna being Purusha, the spirit, the still point, the consciousness that's still. Our consciousness has never moved within us. That's why Christ walks upon the waters. Our Christ within ourselves walks upon the nervous system and livens the waters of the nervous system, and it livens the entire physical organism, and gives us the light within to be able to distinguish between good and evil, and to pierce through the illusory nature or the dualistic nature of this realm. So let's just go ahead and read that chapter one more time, just because it's very, 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 very important. How can Sri Krishna's form be eternal, since he takes birth, performs activities, and gives up his body? This is the story, right? This is what's said that happens in the physical plane. Some people believe that this happened historically. Babaji replies, Sri Krishna's form is Satchitananda, ever existing, full of knowledge, and completely blissful. His birth, activities, and leaving the body are no connection with mundane matter. Lahiri, then why have such descriptions been given in the Mahabharata and other Shastras? He replies, the eternal truth defies description, for it is beyond words. The pure soul in his spiritual aspect sees the transcendental form and pastimes of Sri Krishna. When he describes that supreme reality in words, it appears just like worldly mundane history. Those who are eligible to extract the essence from the Shastras, such as the Mahabharata, experience Krishna's pastimes as they are, because they're eternally going on now. His pastimes are actually going on 7 different planes, astrologically, seasonally, alchemically, even physiologically within our body. The Christ within is going on his voyage, or Noah's going on his voyage, and our body's the ark, our body's the cross. We are the cave that Krishna's born in prison to his parents, in prison, in a jail cell, because the Christ within on the physical plane is born within a physical human body, which is, it used to be known as the prison, just philosophically, because this world is so darkened by the senses we're developing in this womb, and we don't have full access to the light of the spiritual worlds anymore. We are conditioned, and hence that Christ spark within us, Krishna within our hearts, that is being born within the prison, or Christ being born in the manger. And instead of saying it that this happened on this day and time in this person in a country that you've never met in person, is to take what is transcendental and bring it down, and you're bringing God into human form in a way that is allegorically supposed to be understood, that takes place within yourself and also on various different levels. Now, Christ, Krishna are personal, highly transcendental facts, and they are actually the bread of the universe. They are the bread and sustenance of all beings, and that's the metaphor for eating, Jesus's body. Essentially, he's the bread, he's the light, the intelligence, love, and wisdom. And Krishna's, all of his pastimes are always mimicking a mastery over the physical domain. He's always walking upon the heads of serpents. He's saving his family and friends with holding up a huge mountain. He is escaping from the jail, imprisoned. He's always up to highly transcendental activities that take place on the 7th dimension or the 5th, on higher planes of existence. And it's said that these seers and prophets were able to see these wonderful stories on the screen of their consciousness. So what they're seeing, they're peering into the spiritual realm and experiencing the nectar from a more transcendental point of view, because that's how people have been able to have this personal relationship with a being that they didn't know historically. They're actually already somewhat cultivating a relationship with this transcendental being, Krishna or Christ, which is the supreme personality of the universe. It's actually where all of our personalities emanate from, and where we receive our ability to know, to understand, to perceive. And when we do see real historical pastimes of Lord Krishna or Christ, It's actually the Christ within ourselves and the Krishna within ourselves that is an impulse that makes us behave in a godly way. And we are the hands of God. Man is monos, hands are the monos, and the hands are the doing the work and building the physical realm for the spirit. So we are the temple that is built with neither hammer nor sword. There is no other temple on the physical plane other than the human body that wasn't built with tools. And these are the tools of the demiurge or the creator physical nature of God, where that uses the mental force of the creator and does its will to create these physical realities and wombs or tombs so that the soul can come here and develop into individuals. The jiva, which is the separate aspect from Krishna, which sparks off the flame of Krishna. Krishna is the eternal conscious, personal, conscious being that gives us all of our little flames. He's the eternal candle and he lights our candle. And our candle is now fully in quality the same, but quantitatively different, because the candle is a candle that came from it. It was already there. And even though it's lighting many, many candles, it never distinguishes or diminishes itself. It doesn't get lost in the candles. The Supreme Krishna or Christ stays aloof from all the candles of creation. That's why in the Upanishads, he who understands the three aspects of God or the Lord, which is the one who sees all things, the main one, the universe, and the souls within. So you have the seer, the seen, and all the individual jivas, souls that experience. And this experience is to create within our hearts an attraction and love from the source of which we came from. Now, the stories of Krishna and Christ are there to elevate the soul to a higher mind and be able to understand how to transcend duality and reach back into the highest heavens and spiritual planes. If you understand this knowledge from a higher perspective, I would definitely meditate on these stories and understand that they can live in your consciousness to live in a more higher way and see things from a higher plateau and be able to relinquish you from the attachment and bondage of being here in the physical womb or tomb where we forget who we are. And these stories are called cryptograms. As Thomas H. Burgoyne and Alvin Boyd Kuhn explained, these cryptograms, meaning crypt, meaning cryptic, hidden wisdom and knowledge, and grams, pictures. These are cryptograms that show spiritual transcendental truths that we cannot perceive with the physical senses. And that's why the stories are so magical. Christ and Krishna are personal beings that exist on the higher planes of existence. They are the personality or the word of God that enlivens all of us and animates every physical organism in the entire universe. Christ and Krishna are Purusha, the masculine aspect of spirit that impregnates the universal womb and manifests all of the creation as well as all the organisms within it, all of the beings. There's two types of beings. There's beings that are jivas in the spiritual world, beyond the spiritual, but beyond the astral and atmospheric. There's the astral realms and spiritual dimensions called the spiritual sky. And there's jivas and individuals that are incarnated in the physical plane, who are waiting to be promoted or graduated up into these higher planes of existence. Now, Christ and Krishna is the supreme personality. All of the qualities that we have in our day-to-day life as human beings, man or woman, are manifestations of these ideals and principalities that are beyond the physical senses. So, for example, courage, knowledge, understanding, wisdom, beauty. Now, beauty is a form of excellence that shows the God's excellence by the physical manifestation of in the physical realm being a reflection of the invisible, manifest its glory through beauty. All attractiveness is another quality of God. God being all attractive, so Krishna or Ram or Jesus are all attractive one, all glory one, the all courageous, the one that is willing to exceed expectations, to go above and beyond. It's our ultimate human nature within. As Alvin Boyd Kuhn says, the Christ principle within, all cultures have been cultivating the inner Christ within. When you cultivate this Christ within, it's your ability to be a compassionate, loving, civil human being that is able to perceive into the higher dimensions and be in communion with the Holy Spirit or with God, the Creator, through that divine connection. The Son of God is the first emanation of God, which was the Word, and the Word was made flesh. Christ, when we see Christ face to face, is when we see human beings here and now acting in a Christ-like manner. That is the Logos, and that Logos is what allows all human beings to be more than just animalistic and only based on impulse. That Christ within us saves us by lifting us beyond the senses of just the carnal nature of the mortality of the human body, and helps us understand the mystery of resurrection and spirit for our eternal immortal body. When the jiva goes back after the physical realm, it can acquire one of these bodies made of fire, thus go return to the portal of the sun and live within the sun realms. This needs a higher velocity of a body. We need to transmute our atomic body into a superfluous protoplasmic body, which will allow us to live in the higher dimensions as a personal separated individual and attain higher and higher as we get closer to Christ or Krishna, which is that word or the logos or the vibration within that you can hear if you're silent. Silence is the key. Silent and be still, so that you can perceive that inner noise, that inner vibration that will let you have the superfluous image of Brahman or the divine Godhead through the word, through following the word, which is the path, the way of accessing that inner plane. And once you elevate to that and understand that Christ is an eternal being that transcends the physical realm, so that's why you have a relationship with this Christ, even though you did not meet in person. So this proves that this Christ existed beyond time, beyond the physical plane. And these characteristics of Krishna, being the God incarnated, as well as his pastime as Lord Ram, Ram being the perfect householder, Ram being the upright, righteous, courageous warrior, the ideal human being. First and foremost, each character of these scriptures, whether it be the Bhagavad Gita, whether it be Srimad Bhagavatam, Upanishads, the New Testament or the Old Testament, the humans in these stories are the ideals of man and what he can attain to if he follows his inner consciousness, the still small voice within.